everyone, and welcome to my final video of the year. This is something that I haven't and I probably won't do for a very long time after this, but just as a fun way to end off 2021 and enter 2022, I thought it would be fun to do another classic unpopular K-pop opinions video. It's been over 3 months since I've made a video that even closely relates to unpopular K-pop opinions, and out of all of the opinions that I've formed over the past 3 months, these are the 5 that I thought were the most important. So buckle up, because I've been holding these in for a while. Thank you all so much for watching. If you want to support my channel, consider leaving a like or sharing the video, and without further ado, let's get into opinion number 1. When it comes to their music, not all idols should have creative freedom. I think there's a lot of anticipation from K-pop fans, regardless of what fandom they belong to, for their favorite groups to release self-produced songs. And while there's no question that all these idols who try their hand at producing and composing music put a lot of effort into it, and the hard pill to swallow that I think these fans need to is that a lot, and I'd even go as far to say that most of these idols probably shouldn't ever release the music that they make. To put it into perspective, most of the producers who sell their music to K-pop companies have built these reputations for themselves of being good music producers by making music for years on end, possibly decades if not more. And most of these idols who aren't being allowed to release their music because of their companies haven't been doing it for even a fraction of the time. And though I'm not 100% sure that this is true, my main reason for believing that this is the case are the harsh schedules that K-pop idols and trainees have to adhere to, where most K-pop idols have to spend their pre-debut days learning how to sing, dance, and rap. Regular music producers are able to spend their time freely to perfect their craft. And with the little amount of free time that K-pop idols have before and after they debut, it's unlikely that they learned all of the essentials that one needs to make a good song. And unless an idol has years of experience before they debut in creating music, it's unlikely that they'd be able to make anything that not only their company, but just any average person would say meets the expectation one has for an official music release. You see these idols that are able to release their self-produced music like Soyeon from I.dle, Bang Chen from Stray Kids, Castle J from MCND, and Woozy from 17. And if you look into their background as music creators, you'll see that they all started practicing making music years before they ever had an official release, at least under their companies. So I think it's a little bit unreasonable for K-pop fans to expect K-pop companies to allow their artists to release music when it's more likely than not that the songs that they are making do not sound very good. And even looking at the idol producers that I mentioned before, a lot of the music that they've created and released under their official name has been subject to a lot of criticism, even with their many years of experience. I mean, we know how important reputation is in the K-pop industry, so I think it's fair that a lot of these K-pop companies give a hard no to the music that their idols create, because 1, it probably doesn't meet the standards that these companies have for music releases, and 2, there's a chance it would hurt their reputation if they did release that music under their name. Your favorite groups have fake album sales. Going off a similar theme of reputation, I think a lot of people downplay the significance of K-pop companies wanting their groups to appear more successful than they are. In addition to the obvious motive of securing more physical points on music shows and possibly garnering more wins, there are a lot of potential business opportunities that a K-pop company could gain access to by buying their own group's albums. Even if their songs don't chart well, if a K-pop company builds this reputation for their groups of having consistently good album sales, even if they aren't, they can make their groups appear more successful and potentially gain offers for collaborations from variety shows and maybe even gain more monetary business investors. So even if the cost is huge for a company to buy their own group's albums, the opportunities that might arise from it could eventually turn this monetary loss into a monetary profit. And I think the fact that the number of K-pop album sales has risen so drastically in the recent past is proof of this. Obviously, K-pop as a whole has gotten much more popular in the recent years. However, it's only really gotten more popular internationally, where shipping prices are much more expensive and opportunities to buy albums in person are very limited. So I think it's a bit of a stretch to say that all of these album sales are natural, especially from companies that can't afford to send their albums overseas to be sold in stores such as Target. And especially since the popularity of K-pop has only stayed stagnant if not declined in South Korea, where most of these album sales would be expected to come from. I think it's more likely that the recent rise of physical album sales has been more so at the hands of the companies than the actual fans themselves. There are too many unnecessary ad-libs in K-pop nowadays. Now by ad-libs, I don't mean the high notes that usually are present in the final chorus of every song. I'm talking about the ones that you can hear in recent releases such as Universe Let's Play Ball by NCT U, You Can't Sit With Us by Sunmi, or Zombie by Purple Kiss. The ones where they just say things like hey, yeah, or most notably, point at random points in the music that don't add anything to it. It almost feels as if they're adding fan chants into the actual audios of the releases that they're putting out, where sometimes they'll just repeat a word in the line that came right before it, or just say something that has absolutely no correlation to the rest of the song. And the reason that I don't like them is because it adds these unnecessary distracting factors into the music that would genuinely be fine and honestly better if they weren't there. I mean, I'll just be enjoying this really nice track and all of a sudden there'll be a voice shouting words that I've already heard into my ear. And that's the thing. Ad-libs typically aren't supposed to be the main focus of any song, but recently, some of these producers have been mixing these ad-libs so far forward into the music to the point where they're so loud that you genuinely cannot ignore them even if you tried. And personally, I really hope this doesn't become a mainstream trend because it's kind of ruining songs that would otherwise be great. Survival shows, for the most part, are good for the trainees. Now, this is not me excusing the physical and mental stress that survival shows put all of these trainees through, and I especially don't want it to come across as if I'm encouraging these survival shows to keep debuting 11-year-olds. However, generally, I do think survival shows are a good thing for K-pop in the fact that they give so many opportunities to trainees who would not otherwise have them. For example, Girls' Planet gave Yujin, an idol whose career was basically over with no chance of reaching success, the opportunity to basically hit the hard reset button and start anew. And even for the trainees that didn't make it into the final group, girls like Bora and May were able to bring a lot of attention to Cherry Bullet that otherwise wouldn't have been there, and potentially gave their company another reason to invest in a future comeback. Besides this, survival shows give opportunities to trainees from smaller companies who are possibly bound to trainee contracts that will never bring them any level of popularity, the chance to debut in a group that is guaranteed instant fame even if it's not monumental. In addition to this, it also gives this opportunity to trainees who would usually be seen as too old to debut, such as Jisung from ONEUS. So while yes, survival shows are extremely toxic, they also give a last chance to so many people who wouldn't otherwise have one, and I don't think we should get rid of them. Mid-tiered companies make the best music. I might have touched on this before in a previous video, but I'd like to say again that the most musically interesting and high-quality music always comes from mid-tiered companies. And I think the main reason for this is that mid-tiered companies have the budget that smaller companies don't, and have to try harder to gain the attention of the listener, rather than big companies whose fans will eat up anything that they put out. To go a little bit further than this, I disagree with the idea that Nugu companies always make the best music. While this isn't true for all of them, and there are quite a few Nugu gems in the industry, in a majority of Nugu group releases, you can hear the obvious lack of a budget, with the most obvious identifying factor of this being poor vocal mixing. While I do agree that Nugu groups tend to have some of the more experimental tracks, most often the poor quality of the music is too hard for me to get past. Meanwhile, the majority of releases from the big three companies as well as Hype seem to have this very apparent lack of inspiration. The clout that you get from being under these companies means that people will eat up whatever you put out no matter how it sounds. And I think especially recently, you can tell that companies are abusing this fact. All companies are trying to create the biggest possible profit from each comeback, so if they don't need to hire expensive producers to create a song that is musically interesting and diverse, then why would they? So instead of getting any good music from the majority of the groups under the biggest four companies in K-pop, we've gotten this trend of uninspired, rehashed versions of their previous releases, all of which are very low quality but still create the same amount of profit. Meanwhile, mid-tiered companies are right in the middle of this. Their group success isn't guaranteed, but they do have money, so they're able to hire these expensive producers who give them songs that have dynamic layers. In order to gain the attention of the largest percent of people who tune in, they have to put out good songs, because if they don't, people will stop paying attention to them. And unlike a majority of the smaller companies, they actually have a means to do this. In my opinion, the best music will always come from the mid-tiered companies, because I don't think this dynamic that I just described is ever going to change. And that concludes this video. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much to everyone who stuck with me throughout the year. I can't wait to make so much content for you all in the future, and hopefully in 2022, we can see the success of MCND together. Thank you again so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button, and if you want to see more from me, consider subscribing. Let me know what you all thought of my opinions in the comment section below, and without further ado, I'll see you in 2022. That was cheesy. Anyways, peace out.